Hello and welcome back to the Fit40 Podcast, where we simplify exercise and nutrition for busy people over 40 so they can improve their health and feel amazing. I'm your host, Brian Fitzsimmons, certified personal trainer and nutrition coach for people over 40 since 2015. And today we are going to be talking about an awesome topic. I'm going to touch on the topic of why not all nutrition advice is good advice. Now, this comes off of my session I just had with one of my awesome clients, and she said that she got some nutrition advice from somebody that wasn't exactly qualified to give that advice, or we're not even sure because we don't even know what their credentials are as far as nutrition is concerned. And she got advice to go a specific nutrition route that may or may not be best for her. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make a whole podcast on exactly what the reasoning behind not taking advice from certain people is, and how to make the best decision for yourself, and how to find the right people so that you can get the answers that you deserve to put yourself in the best position possible for your long-term health. So before we dive into that, real quick, hit the pause button, go and hit subscribe or follow wherever you're watching or listening so that way you don't miss another episode, because there's awesome ones coming up and I'm very excited to drop them. I want to make sure that you hear them. All right, now on with the show. Okay, so like I said, a lot of times this advice comes from the wrong places. So this client just happened to be at the urologist, and it was like a tech or a assistant that said, hey, you should go vegan. It's the best. And it's like, okay, probably a little bit of bias there. And then I've also heard from other people, like medical professionals who I'm friends with, like ask my thoughts on carnivore, or giving patients advice, oh, just don't eat anything white. Or like you go to the internet and you hear, oh, avoid this ingredient. It's the worst thing ever. It's used in industrial processes, so it shouldn't be consumed anywhere. Let's take a second, okay? Because we're bombarded with all this crap and we don't really know how to make sense of all of it. So I'm going to just take it one by one and we'll talk about it. So first off, like going vegan, carnivore, keto, vegetarian, if you ever hear like a friend or a family member, or maybe even like a medical professional say, oh, you should do this. Well, first off, we really want to pause for a sec, because when you cut out foods, it doesn't just automatically improve your health. Or when you only eat one type of food, it doesn't just automatically improve your health. You probably will feel a whole lot better in the beginning, especially if you're getting away from the standard American diet, which is not that great. And if you are consuming things that you don't normally consume, like say you never eat a vegetable and then all of a sudden you go vegetarian and now you're getting all these micronutrients you didn't before, you're probably going to feel like $1,000,000. But this is short-term benefits. Okay. You want to take into account the things that happen down the line, the long-term things, because with these types of approaches, it does increase the risk of deficiencies. Because, for example, when you go vegan or vegetarian and you don't consume meat, you now have to make up for what you're missing in the meat through supplementation or through strategically eating a certain way. And a lot of people have trouble just eating basics, like let's just get a vegetable on the plate, or let's just get some lean protein. Now we're saying, okay, you got to follow this supplement regimen, or you got to specifically get these types of foods in your diet. And for a lot of people, it's just going to be to the point where it's too much and they're not going to execute it properly, and they're going to be left with a deficiency. But a lot of people don't know this, giving this advice, because they don't actually work with people on their nutrition in the weeds of it all and actually have these discussions. So they think they're giving good advice, but at the same time, you as the end user are taking this advice and getting potentially harmed by it, or also not just seeing the results that you want to see. And along with that, when you do this for the long term and you just keep either falling off completely or pushing it to a point where it is hurting you, then it hurts your long-term success, like the odds of sticking with something for the long term, enough for it to actually have the benefit that this person was hoping that you would get. Okay, that's when it comes to these, like, I guess we could label them as we'll go with like blanket approaches. Okay. So these things that say just cut this food out, or just only eat this type of food. Next is blanket statements that people will say that we're like, oh, it's common sense, or it's like, oh, this has worked for X amount of people. But anytime you make a blanket statement, like the one where I mentioned, like, oh, just don't eat anything white, or, oh, just cut out sugar, or just do this, anything that starts with just, okay, it'll never apply to everyone. And if we were going to be giving top quality, standardized nutrition information that would benefit the majority of people, guess what? it'd be boring as hell. It is literally what the guidelines used to say. Now they've been a little modified because of certain people who are having an influence on nutrition guidelines that are put out to the public. But if you go to like I believe it's called the American Academy of Dietetics, I got to double check on that. But basically the standardized body that certifies and licenses the registered dietitians of the world. Like if you follow what they say for people, it's like, okay, if you're going to have meat protein, make sure that it's lean. Make sure that you get enough protein throughout the day. Make sure that you're eating some sort of fruits and vegetables and have whole grains in your diet. Like make sure you're getting enough fiber. And then that's pretty much it, along with controlling for calories. Okay, that's pretty much it. It's nothing sexy, nothing crazy, nothing that should make you be like, oh my God, that like I should totally change my diet overnight. Nutrition's boring. Let's just say it. It is. It is. Okay, so when it comes to getting this advice, like one of the best things to understand is like, is this person's credentials? Like whoever is giving me this advice, what is their background? What are they actually trained in? So like, let's take a doctor, for example, okay? First off, they're highly standardized and tightly regulated, and they take tons of different national exams, and they have a mandatory residency and board certification. Now, when it comes to nutrition, I'm going to highlight two professions in particular that tend to be the ones on the internet that we see that are putting out misinformation, just blatantly false information that has been disproven over and over again by people who are registered dietitians, by people who are PhDs in areas of nutrition. And those are chiropractors and naturopaths. So when it comes to chiros, like in comparison to doctors, for example, they have standardized national exams, but it's more variability in the training after the fact and the practice of their scope. So chiros do take these exams, but after passing, they get their state license and boom, they're treating people. There's no like standardized residency program like a doctor would do. And I can tell you from secondhand experience through my fiance that there's a lot of people that don't make it through residency because they're not that great at being a doctor, but they're really good at being test takers. And in something like a chiro profession, there's no gap, like there's no guardrails there for the people that are really good test takers, but then they could be like the worst practitioner ever. And there's a gap in schooling. So you don't know for a fact that, hey, this chiro is the exact same level as that one. So you may have the world's best. And I've met incredible chiropractors who are very, very good at what they do. But somebody else might have a terrible one giving them horrible information. And they're like, oh, well, we're trained in nutrition as well. And you're like, well, how do I know you even understand this at the level that I require? Like maybe you have a clinical condition that they are in no way like good to give advice on. You just don't know. And on top of that, there also is a issue when it comes to informed consent when it comes to chiropractic, because for example, you go to a doctor and they tell you, hey, this medication carries these types of side effects, X, Y, and Z. Meanwhile, you go to a chiro and they'll just crack you without any sort of like, by the way, just so you know, before I put hands on you, this carries the risk of stroke. It carries the risk of all these other things because nothing comes without risk. So that's just one of my personal pet peeves, but it all speaks to the fact that, hey, if you're going to be getting advice from somebody, make sure it's a top level person in whatever this is. So if it's spinal manipulation and popping, cracking, all that stuff, and understanding the body from a kinesiology standpoint, they can be very, very useful, very, very helpful, and extremely valuable when it comes to those things. But maybe not nutrition. Naturopaths next. Okay, they are also a little bit fragmented in how they actually get their licensure and how they practice. So when it comes to naturopaths, for example, there's two types. There's the licensed naturopathic doctors, the NDs, and there's the traditional or unlicensed naturopaths that have no standardized education requirements. There's no national exams, and they can practice in states with little or no regulation. So that isn't exactly a recipe for good things to happen, let alone getting good nutrition advice from them. Okay. because those are always going to be the people that are like, they've been doing this for hundreds of years, and there have been millions of people following this approach, and it's always worked for them. And we're like, cool. So where's the receipts? Like, can we just see any sort of proof behind this? And they're like, oh, just use your common sense. It's like, no, that's not how this works. You need receipts if you're going to give advice, especially if somebody's coming to you asking for a specific problem that they are having. All right. So you got to be very careful with understanding if you are seeing a naturopath or a chiropractor, are they top quality? And it can be hard to understand if they are or they're not, because they could be very well spoken and sound really smart, but there's a lot of people that sound very smart that give really horrible nutrition advice. Just go to the internet. You'll find plenty of them. Okay. And yeah, I'll end it there. And then along with that, I wanted to touch on registered dietitians, because this is like the top of the top when it comes to nutrition. This is why, for example, like there's a big pushback right now with, oh, doctors need to learn more about nutrition. And it's like, okay, I'd rather my doctor learn more about medicine if we have to have somebody specialize in something. I want them to be the utmost specialist in that. And then I could see somebody else who's a big specialist in this other thing, instead of expecting them to be the jack of all trades and being like 70% good at everything instead of being like 99% good at the one thing. And that's where the registered dietitians come in. It's like, okay, you see your doctor for medical stuff, for treatment, as far that requires medicine. When it comes to nutrition, go to a registered dietitian. Okay, get the top level of education when it comes to nutrition, because they get their accredited degree in nutrition and dietetics. They get supervised clinical internship. They pass their national exams, and they have their ongoing continuing education to keep it going and stay on top of things. But that being said, some people can mix this up with nutritionists, which are not the same thing. Okay, nutritionists, anyone can call themselves a nutritionist, and there is really no legal ramifications for that. In any state, somebody could just post on the internet and be like, I'm a nutritionist. Okay. But that being said, there are certain certifications that are worth looking into. So if you do have a nutritionist right now, or you are looking into getting one, honestly, if you're looking, go to a registered dietitian, but look for certifications like National Board for Health and Wellness Coaching. It's like a health coach certification. There's the ISSN Sports Nutrition. Its acronym is CISSN. And then there's Precision Nutrition, which is the one I have. Okay, that is mostly for personal trainers and people in the fitness space. And it's a way to complement things like registered dietitian advice. Like, for example, me, I love it when people go to other professions, and then I am that person that is like the glue and the accountability and helps them do the things that their specialists are telling them to do. So it's like, okay, I got blood work back, and my doctor said I got to lower this. And it's like, okay, well, we know this, and this works to help with that. Like, for example, like when it comes to A1C, what can we do for that? Well, number one, let's make sure that you're having more fibrous carbs rather than more simple sugars. Let's make sure that we are getting as much muscle mass as we can, so that way it improves insulin sensitivity, and that'll help together. And that's how a coach can operate. But at the same time, I'm not going to tell somebody, oh, based on X, Y, and Z, you need to do this. Like, I'm not diagnosing it. I'm understanding, hey, this is what your specialist told you needs to happen. Let's figure out how to support that. So, in conclusion, always check what their credentials are. So if you're on the internet and it says doctor, whatever, doctor of what? Find out. And if they're hiding it and making it very hard to understand that they are not a medical doctor, then that is a gigantic red flag. And you do see that in the chiropractic space, for example. That's why they say, there's a saying on the internet, it's not all chiros, but it's always a chiro. When you see some ridiculous claim when it comes to health or nutrition or anything like that. So just make sure that they're very, very open about the type that they are. Or if it's a PhD, like, you want to understand, are they a researcher or a practitioner? Because a lot of times research will say something and people will put it out there and be like, you got to do this, you got to do that. And then people who are practitioners, who are in the weeds, and they actually work with people in person and see how this research holds up, are like, yeah, that's a great idea, but it's never going to work in practice. So you see that a lot in personal training, for example, you see in research, it's like, oh, for bone density, we need to be doing depth jumps. We need to be doing these things where we're jumping and causing a lot of high impact. And then in practice, it's like, yeah, that is a recipe for disaster when it comes to certain populations, but we can do versions of that that aren't represented in the research, but we know we can regress and do this in a more appropriate way so people get the results that they want. But we're not following the research to a T. We're manipulating it in a way that works best for the person in front of us. Next is, are they operating in or outside of their scope? Are they even qualified to talk on nutrition? Like, does their qualification come with any type of nutrition education, or are they just assuming because they know certain things about the body, because they know certain things about human health, that they can just figure it out? Because that happens a lot online too, where they try and explain mechanisms in the body and they're like, oh, because of this, this happens. And then you're like, oh my God, they know their stuff. They're highly educated. They know. But in the meantime, there's mountains of research saying that that's not what happens. You see this a lot in spaces like the people that believe like calories are not the problem and it's all hormones, or like people that think carbohydrates are the problem, not the calories, because of the hormonal responses that come from it. It's like, well, the research disagrees. Even though, yes, that is how our body works, turns out it's not exactly how it works based on what we thought. With that, go to people for their specific expertise. If you need medicine, if you need some sort of clinical care to manage a disease state, go to an MD or a DO. Okay. If you need acute pain management, like let's say cracking does feel really good and you get manipulations and it allows you to live your life in a more pain-free way and you respond really well to it, go to your chiro for that, okay? If you need help rehabbing an injury and you need that handoff from surgery to that next level, go to a physical therapist, okay? Or if you're experiencing just general nagging pain and you can't really put your finger on it and figure out what it is, go to a physical therapist and get on a plan to help improve that. When it comes to nutrition, go to a registered dietitian. And when it comes to the accountability piece and making sure you're actually doing the things that all of these specialties are telling you to do, because how many times have our doctors said, exercise more and eat less? And we're like, great, we'll do. And we come back the next time and we're like, well, that didn't actually happen. Okay, you need some sort of accountability, some sort of system to keep you doing these things. That's where a personal trainer and a coach come in. So bonus points if they have certifications that touch on nutrition or things like physical therapy. So like if they have corrective exercise certifications, like that will allow us to work cohesively, because there's no one profession that knows everything. That's just your one-stop shop for all this information. And that's why you need to get it from specific places. And also at the same time, make sure everyone on your healthcare team is on the same page. Because if you have everybody contradicting each other saying, oh, well, your doctor told you this, they're an idiot, I'm telling you this, or, oh, my personal trainer said this, but my physical therapist said this, or my dietitian said I should eat grains, but my personal trainer says, oh, I should eat low carb. Okay, everybody should be on the same page. And guess what? When those people are highly educated, when they take their shit seriously and learn from as unbiased of resources as you can find, and go to that level where they are as educated as they possibly can be, a lot of them tend to say the exact same stuff. So if it's conflicting, but like 2 or 3 people are saying one thing and then the one isn't, maybe it's a sign to get rid of that person and substitute them for somebody else. Okay, so just make sure that you're getting a solid message that helps you stick to your plan, that helps you get the best results possible so that you can live the best quality of life that you deserve. Now, that all being said, with all that, okay, obviously I am a coach. So if you have all these pieces, but you can't really get yourself to do the things that these specialists are telling you to do, that's where I come in. So if you need that in your healthcare team, go ahead and hit that link down below and schedule a free intro call. You could join us in person in Greenville, North Carolina, or on Zoom anywhere in the world for personal training. Or you could do the online accountability coaching where I create your plan for you and help you stick to all these awesome things that you are learning from other specialties as well. All right. If you have any questions, feel free to message me or email me at brian@fit40coaching.com, or just go ahead and set up that free call. We'll talk all about it. But that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you learned a thing or two. I hope your chiros and naturopaths don't hate me. But anyway, I'll see you next time. Go kick some ass. Bye-bye.